Welcome to another episode of Architect Tomorrow. As you can see, I've broken out of Zoom. There aren't the horrible square boxes. We're actually here in person in London, actually in the St Mary Axe building, otherwise known affectionately as the Gherkins. You can see the kind of design of the building behind us. So yeah, I'm here today with Ben McCarthy of Salesforce Ben. A bunch of reasons why I'm excited about the conversation with Ben today. The first is, and I always love this, when members of the community introduce me to new people to come and talk to. So Penny Townsend, who you've probably seen on a couple of videos before, introduced me to Ben. Also, Tanium, for the last, over a year, has been part of the Salesforce ecosystem, and we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But yeah, look, Ben, let's kick off with a bit of an intro and background to yourself.
Sure.
How did you get into sort of tech to start with, and then what's your journey to Salesforce Ben?
Yeah, sure. So I guess tech, kind of the conventional route, always been into computers, like tinkering, building PCs, like water-cooled PCs when I was younger and things like that. I was never really that academic at school, like very average student, like C's and B's.
More about the coursework.
But the practical stuff. So my A's were kind of, IT, computers, right. But eventually I went on to do information systems at Cardiff University, which I didn't know at the time, but it was like the perfect course for a job in Salesforce, because it's information systems is basically half business, half computer science.
It's about the system part
meshed
of it.
together. Yeah, exactly. I eventually got a graduate job as a graduate IT consultant, and I didn't know what I was going to be consulting on. I just thought, I'm a generic IT consultant. But on day one, it was Salesforce that I was introduced to. And as soon as we started, and I was in a group of room, and actually I was the only one from an IT background. I was in a room with like a political student, English student. But everyone kind of just got it straight away. Everything that you've been building on, Microsoft Access when you're at school, like things like that. It just clicked into place of why people need these systems, the business reasons and the business benefits to automate processes and things like that. It all just fell into place. So after I finished off there, I went to work for an end user, so I was running Salesforce internally for them.
Okay.
Then I moved over to an app exchange company, Conga, which is where I met Penny. Penny was the MD, my boss over there. And then I went to move to a consultancy and kind of founded. The managing director basically left a very small consultancy, the London office, and I was promoted to managing director, where I ran that for 4 years. And then alongside all of that, I founded Salesforce Ben, which was my personal blog, hence the name Salesforce Ben, and has now become, so that was 8 years ago, and it's now become the largest Salesforce news site publisher in the world. So we kind of like to compare ourselves a bit to TechCrunch, but just focusing on the world of Salesforce. So it's like new features, new products, acquisitions, announcements, releases, new features in the releases, but also a lot on how Salesforce professionals can advance their careers. What kind of jobs should they take next? How can they upskill? What kind of salary can they expect? All that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's my career in a nutshell. I think one of the great things in Salesforce at the moment is so many people are coming from non-traditional backgrounds, and that's almost the norm now. I think it's kind of rare to hear someone that's actually been to uni and got Salesforce that way.
Well, I'll perhaps touch on the talent shortage of you in a bit, but yeah, the kind of, and I personally think it creates quite an interesting, diverse mix when you have different people from different backgrounds. But it's always interesting to hear your story. But thanks for that, Ben. So, how long has Salesforce Ben been going?
So 8 years now, which is quite shocking. So I had that graduate job, and then I moved to that was working for a consultancy, then moved to an end user where I was running their Salesforce instance internally. Founded Salesforce Ben while I was at that end user job. So the reason I kind of founded it was because there wasn't a lot of documentation online at that time. Trailhead, I don't know if you know Trailhead, which is Salesforce's learning platform, wasn't around. It was 2 years prior to that. So really it was just a place for me to note down if I was kind of learning something and there was no documentation. It was just a place to kind of write it down, write down this tutorial that I'd worked out myself, and if it was online, if anyone wanted to read it, then they could go for it, but then it just kind of snowballed a bit.
Have there been any kind of hiccups or interesting sort of moments along the journey?
Do you know what? There hasn't really, because I think building something like an online publisher is just such a slow, gradual thing. Like now we got 300,000 monthly users last month, and it's just a very gradual process, years over years.
So it's been pretty organic then.
Yeah, extremely. So we get the majority of our traffic from Google. So it's a lot of, it's something like 80-90% from Google. So we do all this social stuff, but social really is a minuscule amount of traffic.
That's interesting, but it's still sort of search. Is it paid search or larger?
All completely organic. And it's just as I guess as Salesforce is getting more popular, more people are searching terms and things like that. So we're trying to put out as much relevant content as we can. But also, I don't know if you know the stat that Salesforce predict 9.3 million new jobs by 2026. So it's a lot of people coming into the ecosystem. And I think we fill quite a nice niche where Salesforce has great content. Trailhead is fantastic, but we kind of try and simplify it as much as we can. No fluff. And Salesforce are always going to be talking about their products in a certain way, but we just want to kind of give the raw, the raw content.
The no BS sort of, And what's interesting for me is quite how big the Salesforce ecosystem is. I mean, going back to Penny, I mean, when so Penny and I worked together many years ago. One of the things we were working on, she was working on when we paths crossed originally was the Salesforce implementation for one of our projects, and then it was interesting sort of kind of then find her again, kind of working for yet another sort of Salesforce consultancy. I mean, it seems like there are a lot of consultancies and parts of the Salesforce ecosystem. I mean, it's a whole business sort of industry, and it's a microcosm, isn't it? But it's not small, it's big, right?
Yeah, so I mean, the Salesforce ecosystem comprises of SIs, consultancies who are implementing Salesforce, and you've got the end users who are using Salesforce and have a team internally to run it. Then you've got ISVs, which is independent software vendor, which is the apps. Yeah. So some of the apps now, some of the DevOps apps like Copado or backups apps like Own Backup. These companies are unicorns. Own Backup got valued at $3 billion the other day. So some of these companies are absolutely huge. And then actually you've got PDOs as well, which are I can't remember what it stands for, but they're the people who if you have an app idea, like if Tanium had an app idea they wanted to build inside of Salesforce, you go to a PDO and they develop your app for you. So it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's something I'm fascinated with because I consider myself an entrepreneur and I'm quite interested in the entrepreneurial lifestyle. I find it very interesting, these new types of companies that are spinning up in Salesforce all the time. Like there's companies which will even negotiate your Salesforce contract for you, and they take a percentage of the and we've got a small publishing business that's just focused on Salesforce.
The other part of it is I think people don't quite appreciate, if they're not involved in the ecosystem, quite how much beyond sales Salesforce has gone, right? I mean, clearly there is still a big CRM, there's still a big sales. If you work in sales, chances are you're probably using Salesforce to log your opportunities and accounts and communications with customers. But the reality is it's gone far beyond CRM, hasn't it? I guess it has done for some time now.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, the kind of core CRM is still like Sales Cloud, which is for selling, and Service Cloud, which is customer support. Then you've got the industry clouds, which is like financial services for financial services companies, Health Cloud, Manufacturing Cloud, which is all like specific sales and service cloud implementations, but for these industries, purpose built, which was through the Velocity acquisition. But then you've got marketing, Tableau,
Pardot,
Pardot, like B2B marketing. What else? MuleSoft for integrating. They've released the Net Zero Cloud, which is to help you track your output, like environmental
that's really
output.
Okay.
So they've just done a deal with F1 actually, so that sponsoring F1, which is quite cool. So you see Salesforce logos around F1, and they're helping. They've just bought Net Zero Cloud to help them get to Net Zero, and they're releasing 2 or 3 or 4 products each year. I'd say quite big products, or acquiring them.
Tanium is now part of Service Cloud essentially, so the ITSC sort of proposition. One of the things that you may not be aware of is quite how the relationship between Tanium and Salesforce is such that we're able to use Tanium data. So what Tanium does is quickly is essentially lets you see every bit of technology, every asset you have, be that a laptop, desktop, server.
I saw a quick demo, a 90-second demo on YouTube that was quite impressive. Finding like a hash from a dodgy file or something and searching every computer.
That was probably Darren. So Darren did a really quick lightning talk in 90 seconds. And that's just him showing some value really, really quickly. But essentially what it does is it's like the Google for your IT estate. So very quickly you can go and search for like users, processes, in that case an MD5 hash. applications, the performance of machines, etc. So that's been running for launched in 2007 as a company, and we've been maturing ever since. But what we've got to now is a point where we can take that data, rather than having to search for it, present it alongside a Service Cloud ticket. So someone raises a help desk ticket into Service Cloud, the help desk operator can see not only what the person is struggling with or asking for, they can get a complete X-ray breakdown of what's going on the computer.
Yeah.
How much CPUs are utilised, what apps are installed. Kind of a breakdown which stays a whole bunch of steps like, can you tell me, Ben, about what's going on with your computer? You can already see what's going on. And the idea is to sort of reduce call times and close tickets faster, because if you can arm the IT help desk person, you can maybe close and resolve an issue in first line, rather than having to perhaps go to second or third line, and maybe even close it in the first case, so first call resolution.
I suppose this fits perfectly into the digital HQ, because everyone's remote and can't walk over to a help desk and get an IT guy.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Salesforce and Tony collaborated, is recognising now the world has gone hybrid and in many cases remote, particularly for knowledge workers. You can't just drop your laptop off into the IT department. The IT department needs a smart way of seeing what's going on with your computer, changing it, provisioning it, etc., remotely, or wherever you might be. So, it's a really interesting partnership. I'll put links in the video description to where people can find out more. But the Service Cloud piece for me is fascinating, and I think until this happened, I was perhaps in that set of people that thought it was largely still just the sales, and perhaps ticket management, but the whole marketing piece, the whole new avenues that they've gone on. And given you're pretty in tune with the community and ecosystem, what are you seeing perhaps coming? In Architect Tomorrow, we'd like to talk about the future. What's your kind of bet on what Salesforce is perhaps going to do next, or what's the kind of big thing that you're excited to sort of see happen in near term?
So I think I've always been really interested in growing your career. I mean, our mission statement for Salesforce Ben is advancing your Salesforce career. So helping people in any way we can to advance their careers. And something that's really exciting at the moment is one of the reasons that I think did quite well in Salesforce was because it didn't require code.
Right.
I've never been dedicated enough to learn how to code. At uni, it was just kind of copying the guy next door. But it's all declarative, so it's point and click. It's building automations, complex automations processes with clicks, not code. And Salesforce taking this step further with Flow. So I don't know if you've heard of Salesforce Flow. No. So Flow is it's a declarative automation tool. So it's update this field when you do this, but it's quite a complex UI, and you can do very complex stuff. You can do loops and things like that. So it's more comparable to kind of drag and drop code. So it's very impressive, and Salesforce are migrating all of their automations to Flow. So it's quite a big change, but quite a powerful change. But people are kind of talking about declarative developers now.
Right.
So these declarative developers are the people that can't code, but they can build very powerful automations with this complex.
It's basically, if you can define a diagram, a flow diagram or something, and then it's not a huge amount step further.
Well, that's exactly what it is. A flow looks like a process diagram, but you're just adding things in, and you can add formulas, but it's very impressive, and people think there's going to be a new role coming out, because you've got the Salesforce admin, which is the core, I would say probably the most common Salesforce role, which the Salesforce admin would go in the end user to run their system. But talking about declarative developers, which all they do is build complex automations, but not using code, which I think is quite exciting, because it's more accessible. It's lower barrier to entry for someone that can learn Flow, as opposed to spending years learning how to code.
Yeah, I think the kind of rise of it's the kind of what's replaced RAD essentially. Rapid application development, this sort of visual, the likes of OutSystems, and I'm trying to remember, I think not Aptio, but similar things to that, where you can
Tray, the integration one.
Essentially, you can build an app by dragging and dropping sort of elements on it. And I suppose in my career as an enterprise architect, a solution architect, I've had a bit of a love-hate relationship with some of those things, because I think used for the right purposes, they're great.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I've come across sort of nightmare scenarios where someone is trying to build some kind of massive financial risk model, on some of these things, and it's no fault of their own. It's because they've just sort of mapped out whatever and done it. But then when they want to try and scale it, so I think in the right way, these things can be really, really powerful, and it's for me, part of this journey of the commoditization really of technology, right? That you're right, not everyone needs to know about coding. That's kind of hidden for, for many people. And essentially it makes it, like saying, more accessible for business users to create their own applications. But then I think there are still, the conflict for that, for some organisations, is they want to differentiate, they want to use technology in a really unique, bold way. If you look at things like Web3 and crypto and all this sort of stuff that's coming up at the moment, love it or hate it, some organisations are going to jump on that bandwagon and they're going to do some very custom development in order to kind of create a new sort of customer experience or user journey. So I think for me, these things are great, but used in the right way. And I think for removing admin or for fairly I suppose linear things, that they make a lot of sense. So no, that's interesting to see Salesforce continue to go down that route.
And this has been happening, like this low code movement, no code.
That's it, low code and no code.
But a long time in Salesforce. So people are always kind of predicting, will developers be around in X number of years or something like that. But developers are the most have always been the most in-demand resource in Salesforce, even though they're releasing more and more declarative tools. So, and I think it is because you've got completely custom UIs with the Lightning experience now, integrations, and of course you will always need, so Apex code is the code which is used on Salesforce platform, and if you're looking to build very high volume scalable automations, then Salesforce always use Apex for that instead of the low code stuff.
The low code movement's really, really interesting, and I think I guess there's a bit of me as a former developer that sort of perhaps has issue with it. I need to get over that, and just it has its place. And going back to sort of talent and skills, that's quite an interesting part of that dynamic, isn't it? Because to assume that we can hire enough programmers and developers is probably mad, right? We're not. So actually, low code and no code tools are probably part of the answer to the talent shortage in some ways.
Yes.
Because it allows people to kind of create their own solutions where that's within the realms of possibility, rather than having to. So that's. But what's your take on the sort of talent shortage? Where is the Salesforce ecosystem in terms of talent? I mean, how hard is it to hire?
Extremely.
Right.
Like it was always hard, even before the pandemic. But then the pandemic hit, and Salesforce's share price shot up because everyone was going through their digital transformations. There was I know in the London kind of consultant world, there was a big lull, while in the middle of 2020, while everyone was working out, what the hell are we going to do? Can we survive? And then after that, it just absolutely boomed. And it's the thing is, in the Salesforce, in the London ecosystem, people steal from each other all the time. And when I used to run a consultancy, that's what you do as well, because that's the easiest thing. But it's not the right thing to do. The right thing is to bring in talent from outside.
Right.
And I think people are putting a lot of effort into that now. Salesforce themselves are putting a lot of effort into partnering with training providers, providing free programs themselves. So they've got VetForce for veterans. They've got Talent. They've got Talent Alliance and Pathfinders. I can't remember exactly who they're targeted at, but they're free programs targeted at a specific type of person. Maybe from low-income backgrounds, things like that, and to help skill these individuals up to get in Salesforce. So. But I know I gave you that statistic earlier, 9.3 million new roles are going to be available.
That's just mad.
So it's, and as the Salesforce ecosystem kind of expands as well, they've got Slack now in the Salesforce product suite, where you need roles, Slack developers and, admins and things like that. So it is quite crazy, but I think there's never been a time before where there's as many training companies and individuals focus on upskilling and training people in the Salesforce ecosystem. Us included. We don't offer training programs, but we've got courses, and of course we're putting out content all the time and just trying to add value really in that space.
And I think I saw that you've got a book on starting a Salesforce consultancy. Yeah. Right? Is that published, or is that something you're working on at the moment?
Yeah, it's an ebook. So
okay.
So it's online, but it's that's something. So I kind of joined. I was at Conga where Penny was, and then I got a job in a consultancy because I wanted to learn more about the Salesforce, the actual Salesforce product set, not an app exchange app. And I got promoted to managing director after about 2 months because the other managing director left and someone else left. So I got promoted, but it was just like a title, no pay rise, no real responsibilities. But then after 4.5 years, we grew it to 2 2 million in revenue, 25
wow.
people.
Right.
So I kind of had this 4 years of crazy trying to learn as much as I could about how do you run a consultancy. So it kind of fast tracked me, and so I wrote a book on how other people can do it, because it's if you're a little bit entrepreneurial, you run your own business, very easy to do to move from a Salesforce consulting role to your own consultancy.
Right.
But it's got nuances, the same as anything, that I had to learn very quickly, so it was all very fresh in my mind when I left.
But it feels almost like this subculture of IT. It's a bit like
Salesforce. Big time.
Some people, I suppose, some people are in the kind of Microsoft ecosystem, aren't they? And I guess some people are in the more traditionally in the IBM one or Oracle. But Salesforce very much feels like this sort of more cloud native, more sprinkling a few more buzzwords here, shall I? Like digital transformation, the kind of the more modern SaaS kind of wave. I think that's possibly why it's so attractive, because I suppose the barrier to entry is perhaps easier, right? And then there's obviously that learning curve, but also the fact that it's SaaS means that it's not just easier in terms of the skills, but it's easier in terms of kind of building and implementing something for a customer, right? It's kind of whereas perhaps some of the other ecosystems, there's far more. I don't know if this is changing because they're going cloud as well, but there's perhaps a bit more foundational pieces, elements. In Microsoft, you might need to build a SQL server and this, that, and the other. Clearly with Azure, some of this stuff's changing, but I think Salesforce were the ones that kind of came along and went, we're solving the business problem. Yeah. And actually, that technology underneath the hood isn't so much of a concern.
Yeah. It's just all. It's one of the reasons that Salesforce is so powerful is because you can make so many customizations. Just as we were talking before, declarative. Anyone can go in, and that platform has been. I think it was called Force.com.
It's been renamed
Salesforce Platform now,
right.
But they brought it out in 2005, so it's been built upon since 2005 or something. So it's just so powerful and flawless in the way that you can customize things, and as you said, lower barrier to entry. There's this term accidental admin in the Salesforce world, and it's because most people you meet didn't plan to get into Salesforce. It was like they were in the IT team and their boss went, hey, we're implementing Salesforce, you need to learn it. And then an accidental admin. That's a very, very common story. Okay. And I think one of the other things that makes Salesforce stand out is the community. So I've kind of learned this over the last few years, but the Salesforce community is very tight-knit, close, helpful, send the elevator back down kind of thing, successful people wanting to help the new people. And that all stems from Salesforce's founders, the 1-1-1 model they've got where they give back 1% of their equity, product and time. Okay. So it's a very cool community, and what I've heard is that from other communities like Microsoft, it's not the same, it's not as kind of tight-knit, you've got Salesforce user groups all over the world, you've got a movement called Salesforce Saturdays where people not give up their Saturdays, but they go to a cafe and meet other Salesforce professionals Saturday just to learn, speak to each other, things like that. Yeah. So that's something that I think has propelled the Salesforce, product and the ecosystem so far. Yeah.
Well, it's a fascinating insight into the world of the Salesforce community and ecosystem. And I look forward to exploring it further as Tanium gets more and more involved in the ecosystem. What do you see coming next for Salesforce Ben? What's next on the horizon for you guys?
So we've been trying to define that. So we've got a great team. There's 6 of us now with a couple of people who work part-time. And we've been defining that together, what's our future. And we define our mission statement. In summary, it's advancing Salesforce professionals' careers, helping new people get into Salesforce. But we've got our core kind of site, which is the publishing business, so getting out free content, 15 blog posts a week, something like that. Then we've released our courses section of the site, which was around 6 months ago. So we've got my ebook /course, how to start a Salesforce consultancy. Been working with people external to Salesforce Ben, thought leaders. So my friend Ankit's just done how to become a Salesforce freelancer. Okay. And then we develop courses internally, how to pass certifications, practice exams, things like that. The next thing that we're launching in about a month is a job board, which we're quite excited for, because there's no Salesforce job board, or there are Salesforce job boards out there, but not really ones that are popular. So, and we've got a good kind of user base of Salesforce professionals, and we know a lot of the people who are hiring.
Right.
So we're trying to match them up.
That would be a good marketplace sort of exchange. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what we're focusing on at the moment.
Okay.
Past that, I'm not too sure because this is taking up so much of my brain space at the moment. but yeah, those are kind of the three core things that we're focusing on, which we hope will help people land jobs and advance their careers.
And does it feel strange, given that Salesforce Ben, I guess, was your creation? It was your is it funny now to kind of work in a company that's sort of partly your name? Is it? Have you ever kind of wondered?
It's sorry, what you can
say? I
say?
was going to say, have you wondered about maybe at some point changing it, and maybe making Salesforce Ben like a sub-component of the company? Or
I mean, it's definitely a bit weird because it's my name, and it used to be, the logo used to be a superhero kind of thing with my face on, with like the S logo on the chest.
Right.
But yeah, it is a bit weird. I think it's got better now because people see it more as a brand name. Like when people meet me, they go, "Oh, there's actually a Ben McCarthy. There's a Ben behind it," which I think is better that it's a brand name, because before people, when like a lot of our content is powered from the community, so we like to, people who are really passionate about Salesforce, they come to us, go, "Hey, I've got an article idea," and we'll help them, format it really nicely, give them tips, and then publish it and get them recognition as well. But people always used to tag me in articles going, "Thanks Ben McCarthy for this article," and I'd like tag them and go, "Thank you, but it was actually who wrote this one." And it's kind of things like that where I was like, I didn't want to take credit away from other people, but I think at some point we probably will rebrand to something else, just because it is quite funny now.
Well, it's kind of a bit like Ask Jeeves in a way, I suppose, isn't it? It's like, because there's this but maybe
like Tom's Hardware or something like that.
That's a good point. Maybe there's an origin story that there probably is a Tom, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. But you don't think about it. So
no, you don't. So maybe there isn't an issue there at all.
Yeah.
As long as you can kind of doesn't inflate your ego so that you can't get in the room.
Yeah, exactly. My girlfriend works with me at Salesforce Ben.
Oh, right. Wow, okay.
Is constantly conscious of my ego, which is good. It's not nice to get big-headed. So.
Brilliant. Well, no, look, it's been really, really interesting talking about Salesforce Ben and the ecosystem, and I hope to talk to you again, but also other members of the community about what Tanium is doing in the community, but also learning more. I think we're really excited about bringing real-time data on technology into the ecosystem mix. We think at the moment it started with the Service Cloud, the ITSC sort of proposition, the kind of service management piece, but personally I can see a whole bunch of other sort of potential angles that might be to do with business risk or cyber or insurance or things like that. So I think we're just sort of scratching the surface really with what that partnership looks like. But yeah, at the moment it's a Salesforce proposition, right? It's not actually a Tanium. It's powered by Tanium, but people wouldn't necessarily know that. Yeah. It's very much a Salesforce product, component of Service Cloud. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, it is. I'm sure our audience would love to hear about it. So I'm sure there's some ways we can collaborate as well.
Brilliant, great stuff. Thanks, Ben.
Cool. Cheers, Oliver.